Welcome back, folks. My name is LastKnownMeal, and as someone who covers Cyberpunk 2077 a lot, I hear a lot of takes, both good and bad. Now, obviously, I am very humbled to have a community which is very passionate about Cyberpunk, and throughout reading comments, I will go through a lot of takes which are absolutely amazing, because, as I said, you have a lot of people who care about this universe and who care about this game. So obviously, when they talk about stuff, they go from like the experience of playing the game and interacting with the world, knowing the lore and all of it, which is very amazing to go through. And honestly, a lot of people here have some amazing ideas which will definitely benefit the game. But on the other side, you also have this group of people who are very vocal, who will spew all kinds of takes when it comes about this game. Now, specifically, I want to talk about one thing which is related to engines, and specifically Unreal Engine 5. So ever since CDPR announced they're basically dropping Red Engine and they're going to Unreal Engine 5 for the next Witcher game, and basically all of the next upcoming projects in the future besides, Cyberpunk expansion and the next gen upgrade for The Witcher 3 are going to be in Unreal Engine 5, so everything in the future. And now, obviously, with that announcement, you have a lot of people coming in with a lot of crazy takes. First off, a couple of weeks ago, I had a discussion with this one person who actually said, why don't they just port the game over from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5? The person was referring obviously to Cyberpunk 2077. And usually it starts with, these lazy developers don't want to actually just take the game, take 10 minutes of their lives to just basically port the game from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5. And as much as I tried to interact with this person to explain that it doesn't really go that way, it seems I was hitting a brick wall. So that's exactly what I want to talk about today. Specifically, that you cannot just port Cyberpunk 2077 or The Witcher 3 from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5. Things do not simply work that way, because there are two different engines. And first off, it does seem to me that there is people who definitely do not understand how engines work and how development works in those areas, because different engines are made for different purposes and uses, but primarily you know about engines which are used in video games, and one of the most popular engines out there obviously being Unreal Engine and Unity, which were used in a lot of games that you play throughout the day. Now, obviously, you have a lot of companies, for example, like Crytek or EA, which are going to be using different engines for their own games. And usually those engines are going to be in-house engines, and they will be only used for their games, and you won't be actually getting those engines to other games, like, for example, you do with Unreal Engine, because Unreal Engine is made in a way to be broad and to be versatile to work in different environments. From creating video games to also doing all sorts of animations and special effects which are actually used in the films you watch today. And the engine itself is comprised of different solutions and mechanics which are used to actually help the game. So if you do have an engine, like for example like Unreal Engine, and you want to create a certain mechanic which is going to be in the game, and if that mechanic is not already present in the engine, there is a way for you to actually upgrade that engine and add those things on top of it to create new mechanics which are going to be used for that title. That's why CDPR basically said that if they run into any problems, they will be working closely with Epic engineers who will help them adapt the engine itself to work in that environment, which is great to have, because when you have Epic engineers helping you with that and they know this engine inside out, it's definitely going to be great for the game, because this will mitigate problems which might occur during development, and you don't want those problems to happen as they happen, let's say, during the development of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, it's also pretty clear that Red Engine CDPR was using is simply not going up to task, and obviously creating a lot of issues for developers to create games that they want to create. And when you have problems with engines, when you have to work around the engine, when you have to create different mechanics which don't work good all the time, and if those mechanics are not going to benefit the game, you run into issues and ultimately your game suffers. Now, also keep in mind that upgrading the engine is simply not, scrapping the engine and working on a new one, even though you can do it, but most companies, when they release a new iteration of an engine, it means that the engine has been upgraded by adding different, as I said, solutions, mechanics, and just different features that the previous version of the engine didn't have. Now, obviously, those changes can be big or small. They're usually bigger when you look at Epic doing Unreal, They are smaller when you look at, for example, Bethesda and their creation engine, which obviously saw upgrades throughout, their games, going from like the Fallout 3 to then everything else which they have been working on. And as I said, it has been proven right now by CDPR that Red Engine is not something they want to go into anymore, because keep in mind, upgrading that engine costs a lot of money and resources which a lot of companies cannot simply afford. So if you're CDPR, you're gonna be looking at this and saying, okay, I don't really want to go and upgrade Red Engine and try to fix it, because either it's gonna be problematic or it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resources, money, which we could spend on something else, like for example, development of that game. And if that happens, it's just best to switch. But Red Engine cannot simply be ported into Unreal Engine because, as I said, those two engines are completely different. They operate in different ways, they use different solutions for various things you do around the game. So technically, porting the game from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5 would be as same as you would make the game from ground up. Obviously, some assets can be used and reused for later on, but everything else, mechanics-wise, has to be programmed again from scratch. So it does seem like you are making a new game entirely, which is different from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, because when Epic was making those engines, they were taking in mind that a lot of people now are working in Unreal Engine 4, so of course they would love to switch to Unreal Engine 5 for the new project. So what they did, they made that easier. So when you're switching from Unreal Engine 4 to 5, it's a lot easier because they're in the same group, they're made by the same company, and those two engines are designed to be compatible with each other. But Red Engine, Unity, Frostbite, Creation Engine, they are not made to work in that way. They're simply not. They're made to work in their own way, and they don't have any correlations whatsoever with Unreal Engine itself. So whenever I hear a take like that, I'm like, okay, like it doesn't work that way. It would be cool if it did, and of course I would love to see how Cyberpunk and The Witcher 3 would look in Unreal Engine 5, but keep in mind, again, those things would require a lot of time, and it would require making the game from the ground up, which is not something CDPR is willing to do. Another thing which could be possible is if they decide to remake Witcher 1. Witcher 1 uses BioWare's Aurora engine, so that engine is pretty old right now, especially the iteration which is used in Witcher 1, so that would kind of make sense if you wanted to remake the game in, let's say, Unreal Engine 5. Even then, you would have to take everything and do it from scratch again, because Aurora engine does not work in the same way as Unreal Engine or even Red Engine in general. Keep in mind, sometimes engines can cause a lot of issues, like for example Frostbite. The reason why Anthem was basically development hell is that Frostbite was not made in that way to basically support that kind of game. And if you wanted to create Anthem, the entire Frostbite engine had to go through various changes and basically like different solutions which would work in Anthem and not like, for example, in Battlefield games or Star Wars Battlefront, which obviously use a different way of using that engine, because Frostbite was specifically made for those kind of titles which work in that similar environment in a very similar way. But even then, Frostbite, same as Red Engine, has a lot of plus and minuses, but in most cases, if those engines are not versatile enough and you're trying to make different games that you're trying to do before, it will simply not pan out properly. So the best thing you can do is simply forget about it and move on. And it's crazy, honestly, how many people don't know anything about, video game development and the way it works and how those things are being done. So, it's not shame, but it's best if you go and learn more about it. But luckily, that is a very vocal minority, because most people that I interact with and most people that I talk about, especially in this community, they're just, you're amazing, you know what you're talking about, and people understand how those engines work and why you cannot simply port one over to another. So that's never going to happen. You can forget about Cyberpunk 2077 going in Unreal Engine 5. You can forget about The Witcher 3 going in Unreal Engine 5 ever. Those things are always going to stay in Red Engine, and that's about it. So thank you a lot for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Tomorrow I will have a new lore video when it comes to Cyberpunk. It's gonna be an exciting one, so I cannot wait to show you that. And of course, We're gonna be talking about a bunch of different stuff throughout these next couple of days. So again, tell me down below what you think about all of this, and I'm sure that a bunch of you saw these takes, not even on YouTube, might be on Reddit, on Twitter, whatever, but yeah, I actually had a tweet about it and it somehow blew up. I don't even know how that happens, but I saw that the problem is a lot bigger than I thought, and it seems it just spans over to not just Cyberpunk, but also different games. So it's just, I wanted to clear that out, and I wanted to explain how this would work and why this wouldn't work and how different engines operate, so hopefully I managed to help you out a little bit. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. This is LKM again, signing out. Huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.